The world is on the move. Millions of people driven from their homes by conflict, climate change and poverty. They make perilous, sometimes fatal journeys to seek a better life. On the way, they're exploited by human trafficking gangs, pushed back by governments, often treated as policies, not people. Tonight, on a special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim. We witness the chaos here in France as hundreds of migrants take advantage of calm seas to make a break for the UK.
It's hard to think of a more brazen example of people smuggling across the Channel. Look over there, there are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat.
We go undercover in Vietnam to expose the men trading in people by exploiting those desperate to get to Europe.
Do you worry about the people crossing, that they might get hurt?
How do you get the boat from Turkey to France?
We hear too from a people smuggler moving thousands across Europe, then onto flimsy dinghies bound for Britain. Plus,
they often get robbed on this train. There's stories of rape, and many people have died riding it.
we clamber on board the Beast, traveling by day and night across Mexico to hear from those electrocuted and beaten unconscious as they head towards the United States. Good evening from Saint-Gat in northern France. The beaches along this coastline often act as the final staging post in a long and arduous journey. As leaders around the world grapple with solutions, in this special program, we'll focus on the millions of people who cross continents, sometimes in search of economic opportunity, sometimes seeking safety. The number of people forced to flee their homes because of violence, persecution, or climate change has been rising since 2012. Last year, it hit a record high of more than 117 million. Tonight, we'll bring you the stories of migrants from Mexico to Vietnam, told to our team of correspondents, and we'll assess the impact on the places where they end up. We begin just a short drive up this coast, in the fortified French town of Gravelines. Our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, witnessed hundreds of people desperately trying to get on board flimsy dinghies, destined for Dover. Here's his report.
It's 4 a.m. and the people smugglers are out on the beaches of northern France. As we watch, a dinghy draws up and dozens of people climb aboard. It's fast and efficient. The boat leaves and the smugglers wave off their clients, now heading towards the UK, and then they run off. Stop. The sea is calm, and today business is booming. Approaching the shore, a dinghy with 5 smugglers on board. In essence, it's a taxi boat coming to collect. A police boat makes waves to try to block the dinghy's route, but it gets past, and the smugglers beckon the crowds of hopeful migrants. There's a surge, a rush to get to the boat. Children and babies are carried. Life jackets thrown on. A woman drifts away. She's struggling to swim. She will eventually be pulled aboard the boat by the smugglers. And watching from the beach, a long line of police who monitor, but under French law, can't intervene. It's hard to think of a more brazen example of people smuggling across the Channel. Look over there, there are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by a police boat out in the sea and by dozens of French police officers on the beach. The final people drag themselves up onto the boat. Back on the beach, there are plenty who didn't make it. Rabaz is travelling with his wife and 2 small children. They've come from Iraq, intent on getting to Britain. How many times have you tried to cross
4
to
times.
Britain? 4 times.
Yes, and I am still trying.
And you will try again?
Yeah, of course.
And
because I don't have any solution. I know very dangerous for me, for my children. I know this one. But when I don't have any solution, I will try.
It's a belief that fuels channel migration, that getting to Britain will make your life better.
And Adam joins me now live. I mean, Adam, you've been covering the migrant crisis for many years now. You've seen thousands of people come and go, but today felt different.
Yeah, it was frenetic. We were just on one stretch of beach. We weren't dotting around up and down this coast. And yet on this one bit of beach, boat after boat after boat coming in front of us. What does that tell us? Well, one thing, it tells us that the people smugglers have found a way of circumnavigating the police. And they do that by bringing in taxi boats, by getting people to go out, stride into the water, because when they're in the water, the police can't touch them. People smugglers are smart, efficient. They may be ruthless criminals, but they're good at what they do. We also can see that there is still that streak of determination by people who have fled their country for whatever reason and want to get to Britain for whatever reason, that these people are determined. They are not put off by failing once. And we can also see that the smugglers, these able people, it's about supply and demand, Yalda, is that you have all these people who want to get to Britain. You've got groups of smugglers who are good at getting you across the channel, whatever those risks might be, and they will take the money from you. If you put that together, what I don't see is a big reduction. I think hundreds of people went across the channel today. It could be, I would imagine, one of the busiest days of the year. The idea that this is a faltering movement, to me, I don't see any evidence of that at all.
Extraordinary. Well, Adam, we will speak to you again a little later in the programme. For now, thank you so much. Well, let's go to Vietnam, where migrants are paying tens of thousands of pounds to be trafficked through Europe. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says they're driving the increase in small boats in the UK. Between January and April this year, 1 in 5 people who arrived on small boats were Vietnamese. Middlemen exploit legal loopholes to provide working visas, allowing migrants to fly to countries like Hungary. Once in Europe, many are forced to pay even more money to fixers, who take them on often dangerous bus journeys across the continent into France. For the final stretch, they board small boats to cross the channel. Sky's Cordelia Lynch filmed undercover in Vietnam to investigate the secret and illegal routes.
In these fields, some carry a hidden hardship. Secrets of exploitation and loss. We're in Vietnam to show you the dark reality of an extensive trade in human cargo. Our story starts where not even death can deter those desperate to get to the UK.
We're on our way to north-central Vietnam, where the vast majority of those making the perilous journey to the UK come from. We want to try and understand better the dynamics behind it, not only why they're doing it, but how they're doing it, and critically, who is making it happen.
This is Do Tan, a rice farming commune touched by tragedy. It's home to some of the 39 Vietnamese victims suffocated to death, found in the back of a lorry in Essex nearly 5 years ago.
There's loads of them. There's immigrants in the back, but they're all lying on the ground.
Okay, are they breathing?
I don't think so.
Among them was 32-year-old Lê Van Ha. His family paid more than £30,000 for that fatal journey, and they're still paying off the loans.
The financial situation is very difficult. We still have a lot of debt. We've borrowed money from so many relatives.
It was his dream and his choice to leave. He urged us to pay the agents. He told us he'd follow his friends to the UK and make money.
Why are so many people leaving?
In the countryside, there are hardly any jobs. That's why they ignore the risks and go. They know there are dangers and difficulties, but they go to change their lives.
And you can see the benefits of hard work at home and abroad here. Golden gates statement statues, so many lavish homes, it's now known as Billionaire Village.
A place once poor, now populated by mansions built from the money sent back by those who left here to work overseas. That journey can be perilous and fatal, and yet it is the reward, not the risk, they remain focused on.
There are signs dotted all over, advertising a chance to study and work in Europe. And some are perfectly legal schemes people pursue. Others are far from it. We're about to show you a brazen trade in people smuggling. And it begins with a phone call to an agent openly advertising trips to the UK online.
Anh là 3 tháng thì trong đấy sẽ thời gian chờ cái visa để bay sang Hungary ấy, thì nó sẽ mất khoảng 2 tháng.
He's offering to take people to Hungary on legal work visas, but he says they won't actually work. It's just a ruse to get into Europe and eventually the UK.
Người bên này sẽ dẫn em đi và đón em ở Pháp luôn. Tức là trên các chặng đường thì sẽ có người của bên anh đưa em đi mà, chứ không để em đi tự do của mình được.
What he's suggesting is illegal, and he's charging over £20,000 for it.
Nếu mà em đi sang đến Anh luôn thì bên anh đang làm cho khoảng 650 triệu. Pháp qua Anh thì bây giờ sẽ phải đi theo đường tàu thủy. Nó mất khoảng 5 tiếng này.
He says he got 53 people to the UK last year alone. It's a stark claim, but is it genuine?
We're on our way to meet with the agent. We've got no idea how open he might be or how suspicious. He may well be just the start of a vast network of people, but we're hoping that he'll give us some valuable insight into a world largely hidden from view.
We're posing as British expats, interested in getting a nanny to the UK, secretly filming the exchange. He quickly reveals pictures of more than 20 Vietnamese men and women camped out in a forest.
They just arrived in the UK. They are in the UK now.
Thời gian di chuyển từ Việt Nam sang đến Anh là từ 7 đến 10 ngày.
He then suddenly presents work visas for Hungary, used, he says, to first get into Europe. He also shows us the type of boat they take from France to the UK. He calls it a canoe.
How many people will be on the canoe and how big is it? I have seen some people die.
Đến một chuyến và đi cano thì chưa có người chết. Sau container thì mới có thể phát hiện ra có người chết.
You think the canoe is safer than containers?
I ask what happens if the police stop them.
Do you worry about the people stopping, that they might get hurt?
But these agents are often the start of a spiralling cycle of loans and debt. Even those migrants who start out working legally, plugging labour shortages, are often pushed or duped into more dangerous, forbidden routes to pay off the money they owe.
What do you know about what Vietnamese migrants are experiencing once they're in the UK?
That is where you have the instances of human trafficking where they are actually bought and sold, because that's the final destination, where you have physical beatings, you have slavery, they're locked up, they're not allowed to go anywhere. For women and girls, there's a lot of sexual abuse, there's opportunistic forced sex work. You know, to just frame it as illegal migrants misses the entire journey, the entire story, the entire context of why the Vietnamese even exist or end up in the UK in the first place.
The shores of northern France are where many make their final an often fateful last push. The UK, the intended dream destination for some, the last resort for others. And for so many, the start of something impossible to escape. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Vietnam.
Well, they keep coming to change their lives. It's that hope for something better that's largely behind the huge movement of people around the world. At the border between Mexico and the United States, the quest is a daily one. Attempted crossings reached a new high last December, with more than 300,000 migrants arriving. It's an almost 2,000-mile odyssey from south to north. They come by different routes, but the most common is across the Usumacinta River, which separates Guatemala from Mexico. Traveling either on foot or jumping on freight trains, they make their way north in small groups or caravans, passing through several checkpoints on their way up to the border with Texas. Many migrants are being violently pushed back south by the Mexican authorities. But the lucky ones that do make it cross over the Rio Grande towards the border fence, which will take them to the United States. Sky's Stuart Ramsey travelled with them on board the train they called the Beast.
It starts with a rumour, then the signals change. There's a train coming. You can feel the tension as families start grabbing their belongings, pulling their children close. The Beast is coming. A freight train heading north towards the United States, and they're going to jump on board. In the dark of the night, in the centre of Mexico, they chase the slowing train, then clamber aboard as it stops. It's chaotic, they don't have much, but it's got to get on. The Beast is dangerous for sure, but these migrants from across the world are desperate.
They didn't think it was going to stop, but it has. And a scrambling on board. This is the sort of truck they're looking for because they can actually get inside. They don't know how long they got. It's all a bit panicky, but of course you can sense the euphoria. Now, of course, they have no idea how far they're going to get down the track, but as far as they're concerned, it's a start.
Slowly, the train rolls forward again into the night with its new human cargo on board. We follow the Beast. Within 2 hours, though, an immigration checkpoint stops the train. The United States is all but closing its borders to the migrants, and the Mexican authorities are hampering their journeys north. This is a concerted, joint effort by the two countries. Some are forced off the train. Many of them are clearly terrified. They're about to be driven back south, and they know it. Officials continue unloading the train of its passengers. Amongst them is Emily. She's held by a migration officer. That is abject fear. She's been separated from her mum, dad and sister, only briefly, but she is only 2 years old, and it's the middle of the night. Her mum, Alejandra, joins her on the track, and they're led away. We refuse to stop filming, which seems to cause confusion for the officers. By now, Alejandra is distressed.
How am I going to continue to carry on traveling? I'm not going to get on that thing by myself. I want to know where my husband is, my daughter. How am I going to continue traveling with just this bottle of water, without food, without money and without anything? He's carrying everything we had.
She's told to keep walking. She's no idea where half her family are. But in the dark, they're reunited with her husband and second daughter. They disappear into the night. From the authorities, no explanations, no directions, no assistance. They're just migrants from Venezuela, like so many here. Some refuse to leave. They're in the last two cars of this mile-long train. They shout at the immigration officers to let them carry on their journey. The officers, supported by the army, are unhappy we're filming this, flashing torches into our eyes and camera lenses. But our presence almost certainly means that after a tense standoff, the officials withdraw. And the train continues with many of the migrants on board. They're still 700 miles from the US border. What we have seen and what we have been told is new. The migrants claim immigration officers attack them on trains to disrupt their journeys north. On the side of a track surrounded by concerned locals, we find a small group who've just been kicked off a train. Naomi is 8 months pregnant. Her partner, Rominger, has been hit over the head with a metal bar by Mexican officers. Naomi tells me she was given electric shocks with a cattle prod 5 times into her pregnant tummy, until she got off the train. They are from Colombia.
5 times they put an electric shock on you. You're clearly pregnant.
When I saw that my husband was hurt, I tried to defend him, obviously, because he is my husband. Then they told me to shut up. I better not say anything. They insulted me and gave me electric shocks.
Roxana Malave's husband was beaten unconscious and has disappeared. She thinks he is dead. She's left on the tracks with her 2 children. They are from Venezuela.
We arrived on the train and a lot of migration officers got on. They started to beat us up to make us get off the train. And my husband, because we had the children with fever, we couldn't get off quickly. He ran off to the front, and when he came back to look for us, they jumped on him and beat him very hard. They gave him electric shocks and they broke his mouth. He was carrying our little boy and they still beat him up. They hit him with a black thing. They poke him in the back. They punch him everywhere. Then they made him stand up on the train and they threw him down the train.
With the help of a local charity, Jose Angel Rivas is found and reunited with his family a few hours later. He's beaten and bruised and needs help to walk. More shocking, though, is this. On his back, cut into his back, are the letters MX. For Mexico, he's been branded. Despite the incredible hardships of these incredible journeys the migrants are attempting, and the new interventions by the Mexican authorities to thwart them, the inexorable move north goes on. We meet Naomi and her partner again, hundreds of miles further up country, boarding the beast. And we join them on their latest leg. This is a high-speed freight train, and the migrants are on the roof. We're heading north to the city of Chihuahua. We're told it's a 12 to 15-hour journey, depending on the speed of the train.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Obviously, we're high up, we're travelling on a train. There's obviously the problem for them of immigration, but also they're prey to the many gangs that control huge areas of Mexico. They often get robbed on this train. There's stories of rape, and many people have died riding it. But it's cheap, well, it's free, and it is the quickest way to get across Mexico.
As the night falls, we race through towns and cities. It's both beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. By morning, fairly frozen after 12 hours through the desert, we arrive in Chihuahua. And the migrants dismount. Climbing down the beast, they're already planning their next leg.
And are you, after this now, what's your plans?
Well, obviously the goal is to get to the United States. That's pretty much it. To have my baby and keep moving forward. To work very hard. That's the goal so far. To get to the United States.
Makeshift migrant camps dot all of Mexico now. This huge movement of people from all over the world north towards the United States is unprecedented. But the migrants seem to have no rights in Mexico. America doesn't want them for political, electoral reasons. Mexico is actively obstructing their movement. It's not solving the problem, though. It's actually window dressing at the border. Naomi and Rominger, like all the others, keep going. Is this where their dreams begin, so near to the United States? Or is it where their dreams end? They just don't know. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Mexico.
Well, thousands try to make that journey through Mexico each day. And this evening, there's been a major shift in President Biden's immigration policy, which could allow 500,000 migrants to become U.S. citizens. Well, let's go straight to Washington now and bring in James Matthews, who's at the White House. And James, I mean, this has been such a contentious issue, immigration ahead of the presidential election, and now this unexpected policy announcement from President Biden.
Yeah, hi, Yalda. We just had that announcement within the past hour. President Biden talking about the 500,000 people who are in this country illegally, who came to the country illegally, then married an American citizen. To become legal, to get a green card and be on a pathway towards U.S. citizenship, as things stand, they have had to leave the country to apply from outside. It can take several years. The danger being it splits up families, creates uncertainty as to whether they can get back to the United States. Biden has brought an end to that. He's saying to these people, look, you can apply for a green card and put yourself on a pathway to citizenship while staying in the United States. So we're talking about 500,000 people, 50,000 children in those households beyond that. It's a significant move by Joe Biden. It will speak to key constituencies, the Latin American demographic in particular, in states like Nevada and Arizona, places with tight voting margins. In both those states, 100,000 people will benefit directly from this move. It's a balancing act for Joe Biden. 2 weeks ago, he restricted access for immigrants at the border. That infuriated allies and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. He will hope that this presents a more humane approach and draws a distinction between himself and Donald Trump, who's promising mass deportations should he win power.
James, as always, thank you so much for that update. Well, in both the US and the UK, the political debate over how to deal with rising immigration is proving to be a key issue in upcoming elections. And it's clear voters aren't happy with the status quo. An exclusive poll for Sky News has found that across the UK, 43% of people thought immigration has a negative impact on British society, compared to 35% who saw it as a positive. The survey also exposed deep political distrust among the public, with 52% saying they think Labour are not telling the truth about what they think on immigration, and 49% saying the same thing about the Conservatives. Every region and demographic distrusted the main two parties on this point. But 60% did think Reform UK was telling the truth on the issue. Though many did not trust the two main parties to follow through on their promises, people thought that immigration would increase under both a Labour and a Conservative government, despite believing that their policies aimed to reduce it. Those who responded also largely thought that cutting immigration would have a negative impact on the NHS, hospitality, universities and social care, but a positive effect on housing. Our communities correspondent Becky Johnson has been gauging attitudes in Swindon.
Since the arrival of the railway in Victorian times, Swindon has attracted workers.
The next station is Swindon.
Increasingly, people have come here from abroad. Today, 1 in 5 of its population were born outside of the UK. The owner of this barber shop has seen a change.
The town's getting multicultural, and that's good. That's what we need, and that everyone just getting to work.
Daya from India is one of 2 foreign employees here. He came from Goa in 2017, hoping to find work.
Yeah, here are many opportunities here, so people coming from abroad.
Client Jamie's shop fitting business was affected by the arrival of more migrant workers.
A lot of foreigners coming over, driving the prices down. But again, I did end up taking 2 of them on as well. They work, their work ethic is better than most of my guys.
Even so, he wants to see the numbers cut.
England just seems to let anyone in and make it as easy as possible.
Is it something that concerns you?
I just think it's gone a bit too far. I think too many people. Which some places in England you go to, there's more. You're kind of an outsider in your own country.
In my country, other people come there. So I have less opportunity. I saw finding an opportunity in other countries.
It just seems like England is the opportunity, isn't it? It's just, but it's not just one country. Where are you from?
I'm from India, Goa.
Yeah, so from India, Goa, but we're getting from everywhere, aren't we?
In the town centre, we met Jason and his mother. He's unemployed and thinks Britain does too much to help migrants.
How important an issue is immigration to you?
Well, I can't get a job. They come to this country and they just get a job just like that.
So when you apply, what do they say to you?
Well, I've got a criminal record. Assault.
Assault?
Yeah.
How long ago?
Well, I've been out of prison now 3 years now.
And so you blame immigrants rather than your criminal record?
But some shoppers we spoke to welcome workers.
We do need people from around the world to help with certain jobs. You know, I live near a farming community and they're really struggling with trying to get people to come in.
All the staff at this car wash are recent migrants. The Afghan manager who employs them came to the UK as an asylum seeker on the back of a lorry more than 2 decades ago.
Do you think too many people are coming to the UK now?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though you came here, you think there's too many coming
it is,
now?
Yes, because there's more pressure. Even see, if you're going to the hospital and right now, you have to wait 3-4 hours to wait for them, and there's an example.
But some people would say that the men behind you, they're taking the jobs that could be done by people who were born in the UK.
Yeah, they could say that, but I don't know if you ask them and offer them to come on to do the work in the car, I don't think they will come.
Across Britain, there are 6.8 million foreign workers in employment, just over 20% of the UK workforce, up from 4.6 million a decade ago, which was 15%. 82% of working-age migrant men are in work, more than the 78% of those born here. 36% of foreign-born workers are in high-skilled jobs, compared to 33% of UK-born workers.
The statistics may surprise people, but could be used to reinforce views on both sides of the immigration debate. Some will see them as evidence that migrants are essential to Britain's economy, while others will claim that immigrants are taking the jobs of British workers.
Bianca from Romania worked as a waitress when she first arrived, but has since trained in law and is now employed at this firm in Swindon.
I don't think that I'm taking anyone's place because I worked to be where I am today.
Emma, who recruited her, says her application stood out. She also has a mixed-race daughter and worries that immigration has become a political battleground across Europe.
It actually makes me feel quite sad and quite frightened, actually, for the future, because I feel it's all very negative. Immigration can be a really positive thing.
The kind of narrative that they're spreading at the moment, that there's all these negatives to immigration, is just really dangerous. And yeah, that just turns into casual racism, I think, amongst the general population, really.
Politicians talk tough on migration, but successive governments have allowed foreign workers to keep coming. That's because British industry argues it needs them, despite the concerns of those who feel their country is changing as a result. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Swindon.
Well, with less than 3 weeks to go to the UK elections, the Labour Party has pledged to change the points-based system and set up a border force command. The Conservatives have failed to hit their pledge to stop the boats. And Reform say they want net zero migration, but can't seem to make the numbers add up. Our data and economics editor is at the screen to explain why migration has proved to be such a political conundrum.
Migration is one of the biggest issues in society right now, but also in the election. But what do the numbers actually tell you? Let's have a look at them. It's striking, isn't it? So much of the talk at the moment is about small boats arrivals. And actually, you can see, yes, the numbers are rising. They're bumpy, depending on the season. But 30,000 in the past 12 months, the highest they've been for quite some time. But how does that compare with the other bits of migration that we know about? So that's small boats. Now bring on other asylum seekers, that's considerably higher. Now bring on other legal reasons for migration, so work, study and other reasons. Legal migration utterly dwarfs the illegal small boat side of things. And then if you add on other reasons, more recently like Ukraine, people coming in from Ukraine and from Hong Kong, that's considerable as well. But really, it's study and it's work, and people who are dependents coming in for those reasons that are by far and away dominating this story. It's very different from the overall narrative that we tend to hear about. But one thing that certainly is clear is when you look at the overall picture, this is net migration as a percentage of the population going all the way back to 1855. This is unprecedented, what we're going through right now. Look at this line. I'm going to bring on the last year. We've never seen that line as high as it's been recently, and this is going back a long way, so people are right to be concerned about this because it is unprecedented. And that is perhaps why you've got a lot of politicians saying they want to do something about it. Of course, Rishi Sunak, he said that we have a clear plan to stop the boats and put a legal cap on numbers. That raises, of course, the issue of whether these caps can actually work. Most famously, there was a cap put in place by David Cameron, net migration in the tens of thousands. What actually happened? Look at the bars. That's net migration, of course, immigration minus emigration. It never went below that line. Obviously, then you had the pandemic, then the post-Brexit rules came into force, and look at what happened next. That is why we got to those kind of extraordinarily high numbers recently. But speaking of Brexit, there's someone else who certainly has a view on this. That's Nigel Farage, Reform leader, saying net migration should be zero, OK? But here's the thing, OK? So in the manifesto, the Reform manifesto, it says strict limits on immigration, doesn't say net zero migration. Essential skills, mainly around healthcare, must be the only exception, OK? So healthcare, that raises a question, OK? If you're just letting skilled workers, healthcare workers in, what does that do to the numbers? Well, let's bring in these numbers, again, on immigration by type of work, OK? So type of work here, temporary, other, and skilled as well. There's other skilled. But look at the increase we've had recently in health and care. Basically, it's because of this that the NHS has kept going, because of an enormous increase. In fact, over 100,000 in the past year alone. That, seemingly, over 100,000 migration, will be consistent with Reform's position.
Ed Conway with his assessment. Well, we know most of those who make it across the Channel do so by paying smuggling gangs. So how do you bring down a criminal network that has such little regard for authority and lives? Our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins has been speaking to a people trafficker who boasts of making £800,000 a year sending migrants to the UK.
Taha is showing me his marketplace, the areas he drums up trade. What he's selling is highly prized and illegal. A spot on a dinghy from France to the UK.
How do you get the boat from Turkey to France?
Turkey to Austria and to Germany, then from Germany to France.
He's part of a smuggling network moving people across Europe. Last year, he made more than £800,000. He's agreed to tell me more about the shadowy industry on the condition his voice and his face are disguised.
My job is to send people from Dunkirk to Britain. From April till November, the workload is very good, and the demand for Britain is high.
And business is booming. More than 11,000 migrants have paid smugglers like Taha to board small boats to the UK so far this year, often paying thousands to pack into rickety dinghies low on life jackets.
I have not had any dying on my watch, but there were a few dinghies that capsized, and some migrants drowned. This passage is a dangerous journey.
Governments say that you are the lowest of the low. You're trading in people's lives.
The British government says that the smugglers are killing people, but we see ourselves as rescuers and not killers. There are dangers for us too. There are quarrels between the smugglers over passengers, and this descends into fights, with someone getting wounded or killed. They use pistols, knives, and AK-47s. You can't do this job without a gun. When there is a disagreement, they come to you at night and empty 2 bullets in you, and then disappear.
Taha says the violence is getting worse. This migrant, Nariman Mohammed, was stabbed to death in a Dunkirk camp in April.
Has anyone come for you? Have you had to carry a weapon or do anything to try and protect yourself?
For sure, 100 times. They came and fired at us, and we fired back. People from both sides were wounded, and the police arrived, and that was when the fighting ended. They'd been fighting with Kalashnikovs, M4s, pistols, and all other guns.
Is this job going to kill you, do you think, in the end?
For sure. I've made peace with that.
So this is a death sentence, a job and a death sentence?
Yes.
Is it worth it?
No, but I can't give up on this job, because that's what I know. I want to give up, but can't stay away from this work.
While the police and politicians try to stop people boarding the boats, smugglers like Taha work on staying one step ahead, promising to find new routes if the old ones are closed, willing to risk their lives for a stake in this multi-billion-pound trade. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, France.
Well, let's focus now on the central Mediterranean, which has become the deadliest migration route in the world. Yesterday, dozens of people were rescued after their vessels got into difficulty. The first ship went down off the island of Lampedusa. Authorities found 10 bodies trapped in the lower deck. Separately, a yacht caught fire and overturned 125 miles from the coast of Calabria on its journey from Turkey. 7 people are known to have died and dozens are still missing. Our international correspondent, John Sparks, is in Calabria tonight.
It seems tranquil enough, but these waters form part of the most dangerous migration route in the world. The shoreline of southern Italy, the objective of so many who put to sea. This sailboat, a recreational vessel with a single mast, didn't make it. It was packed with 74 migrants, people from Iraq, Iran, and Syria, who boarded the craft in Turkey. 8 days passed before another vessel offered them assistance. Red Cross officials in southern Italy said 11 survived, and it's clear they suffered greatly at sea.
All 11 migrants who arrived here have multiple fractures, severe dehydration, severe bruises. From what they say, they were in shock, with clear signs of burns. I have no words for those who didn't reach the port.
The survivors include a pregnant woman and a child now orphaned. And the details of their ordeal are both extraordinary and absolutely typical. We've made contact with one of the survivors, a young Kurdish woman from Iraq who's currently being looked after in one of the local hospitals. And she has told us that she and the other passengers on that boat were duped. They were lied to from the very beginning.
The smugglers told us not to bring any food because it had everything. After that, we ran out and shared what we had. Nothing was left on the boat, no water, no food, nothing.
The captain tried to open a box of provisions, she says, but there was an explosion and the boat capsized.
We stayed on the water for 4 days and no one came to help us. 2 to 3 boats passed by and they got very close. We shouted a lot for help, but they ignored us.
The EU has changed the way it runs and patrols its borders. New policies are tougher, harsher. Mayor Zito says they welcome everyone who comes to Roccella Ionica. It's part of their tradition. But that welcome is wearing thin in much of Europe. The political imperative is to keep migrants out. But the consequences of that may prove deadly. John Sparks, Sky News in southern Italy.
Well, let's bring in our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, who rejoins me here live again. And Adam, I mean, we can see, and we've seen throughout the programme, the desperation of people, the Mediterranean becoming the most dangerous route in the world. You also have an update from the French authorities.
Yeah, we've just been told by the authorities here in northern France. They give us updates on these big, busy days. Often it involves rescues that have happened, people who've been brought back to shore. Unusually, what they've told us is that there were no rescues today. None of these boats had to be brought back. Now, I guess there's probably some that just didn't get away from the shore, but that tells us that every boat that managed to get away from the shore has got over to Britain. So, for instance, all of those people you saw in our report are now, one assumes, in custody in Britain, being looked after, they're being processed as part of this huge wave of people who are going across. These are heading towards record numbers this year. And I have to say, again, from what we've seen, we are awaiting the official statistics from the Home Office, but this looked like a busy day. I reckon we probably saw a good 150, 200 people just ourselves heading over the channel. That's more, I suspect, than the rest of the previous week. It was perfect conditions, Yalda. If you're a people smuggler, this is the weather you would have wanted.
Adam, and as you say, no sign of it slowing down. Thank you so much for all of your reporting. Well, when those migrants boarded those boats destined for Italy days ago, or here in France this morning, they did so in search of a better life. They knew the journey could possibly be fatal, but they took the chance, and many will continue to do so. In this, the biggest election year in history, that desperate tenacity is sure to occupy leaders under pressure to find a solution. Well, that's all from Sangatte and our special coverage of the migration crisis. Thanks for watching and good night.
They often get robbed on this train. There's stories of rape and many people have died riding it.
He was carrying our little boy and they still beat him up.
Over there are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat.
They're all lying on the ground. Are they breathing? I don't think so.
Not even death can deter those desperate to get to the UK.
Do you worry about the people crossing, that they might get hurt?
I can't get a job. They come to this country and they can just get a job just like that.
The workload is very good and the demand for Britain is high.
Is this where their dreams begin, or is it where their dreams end?
Beavers make very, very complicated habitats for water voles. So we've lost most of our wetlands in the UK over the last 150 years or so. So beavers burrowing, beavers dam making, beavers building, directing streams, making more braided water outlets, make these very, very messy, complicated wetlands. And they create lots of edges in those wetlands, which are perfect for water voles. Water voles are burrowing animals. They live next to watercourses. The problem we've had in the UK is that we've tend to have straightened our rivers, we've canalised them. For water voles predators, in particular the North American mink, that makes it very, very easy to basically just rattle through a watercourse and take out the water voles. I think in the 1960s we had about 8 million water voles. We're now down into the 100,000s. They're our most threatened mammal. Their numbers are dropping more than any other. So it doesn't matter whether that's England or Scotland, water voles are in trouble. Of all the species that we've reinforced or reintroduced, maybe water voles are the easiest. They used to be common throughout the UK, from lowlands right up into the higher mountain areas, which this is one of their strongholds now. So they're mini gardeners, if you like. So beavers will produce the habitat for them to live in. Water voles will then enhance that habitat. So they're chopping away at things like sedges and grasses on bank sides. That will clear small areas. That will encourage more wildflowers. Their burrows become homes for other small creatures. And that burrowing as well helps to stir up the soil, brings nutrients to the surface. That encourages more plant and more diverse plant life. I think beavers are fundamental to sort of, if you like, soft flood management. And the schemes that are operating now all over the country are looking at both their ability to prevent flooding by holding up water, and more recently, especially for you down there in the southeast, in holding up water to prevent drought. So beavers create habitat in the high headwaters of the stream, and you end up with a sump. It's a reservoir. They're replenishing groundwater supplies. So in a long dry period, that acts as a slow release. So that's another huge advantage of having beavers there.
Welcome back to the programme. War in Syria led to the largest displacement crisis in the world, with 12 million people forced to leave. Among them, the swimmer Yusra Mardini. In 2015, she started a long journey to safety, first by plane to Lebanon, then on to Turkey, where she boarded a boat set for Greece. But just 20 minutes into that journey, the boat carrying her and more than a dozen others got into difficulty. She swam the rest of the route, pushing the boat ashore after more than 3 hours at sea. Afterwards, her family made their way to Germany with the help of smugglers, and she went on to compete in the Rio Olympics in 2016. Her story of survival was made into a movie. Have a look at this.
He says he can get us on a boat to Greece.
There's no more room in the boat.
We're too heavy. The boat will sink. We need to swim.
Yusra, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Like so many refugees, asylum seekers, migrants who make dangerous journeys, you know all too well because, of course, you fled the Syrian civil war in 2015 with your sister. Your journey was then depicted in a Netflix film. It really was, the idea behind the film was to really humanize the people who make these journeys, because we often hear about them, but they just become numbers, don't they?
Yeah, but unfortunately, this is really sad to say, but we're obviously not just numbers, we're human beings. We take these journeys because of violence and because of war in our countries. And when we try to flee our countries, we take very dangerous journeys to make it to safety and just have a future like anyone else.
You competed in the refugee Olympic team. You're a swimmer. Your sister is also a swimmer. And I guess it reminded people that, you know, that refugees, migrants, people who flee persecution and war still have hopes and dreams and aspirations for something more, which is something that you have tried to show.
Oh, absolutely. I try to show that every day. And for me, it's about proving or showing or changing the misconception about what a refugee is. When we leave our countries, we're already doctors, engineers, swimmers like myself. I started swimming when I was 3 years old. There's this misconception that we come from nothing, which is not true. I come from a country that is very rich in culture, and I've done everything that I do now in Europe in terms of whether that's interviews, swimming. I've done that already in Syria. And when I got to Germany as a refugee, the first thing that I did was to ask where the pool is, because this was my passion and my home away from home. And I think a lot of the refugee Olympic team can relate to that. And that is why it is really important to mention that sport does not discriminate. Sport is a way of, you know, bringing people together, bringing people from the host country and refugees together to create this incredible bond, basically, to show that we actually can coexist, and it shouldn't be difficult for us to coexist.
Yusra, what would you say to people who, you know, say they don't understand how people are able to make these dangerous journeys, risk their lives, especially with small children? And I know in your story and in the film, we did see a number of small children in the boat that you were in.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously these people, they don't really choose to take these journeys. They choose to risk their lives at home with war, or risk their lives one more time to be able to actually have a future and to make sure that the future of their children is also safe. This is why they make their journeys. They make their journeys because, as example, I lost my home. I lost a lot of friends during war and so on. And for me, it was, do I risk my life one more time, or do I risk my life every day living in war?
Yusra, we're grateful for your time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was Yusra Mardini, whose journey and bravery inspired a movie about her life. Well, tonight we reported from Mexico, from Vietnam, from the UK, from here in northern France and from Italy, all to discuss the mass movement of people around the world. 100 million left their homes last year. Leaders will continue to grapple the problems they cause. And of course, those who come to these places, to the shores here in the Mediterranean, and make these dangerous, perilous journeys with their families, often with small children, which is something I saw here in Calais today. Many young parents pushing prams, small and often young children, that they plan on putting on these boats to get across to the Channel and make their way to the UK. Many of them say they're desperate, that they wouldn't have left their homes and their countries if they weren't so desperate for a better life. Well, I leave you with a question. Can there ever be a feasible solution without addressing the root cause in these countries that are so desperate? Well, that's all from Sangatte. Good night.